I didn't want revenge. I wanted her to feel what she made my dad feel. Powerless. My name is Tyler Brooks. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Chicago, Illinois. But this story starts 15 years ago in our old house on Maple Street, with a quiet morning that would change everything. I was 17 the day I walked into our kitchen and found my father hunched over the table, surrounded by unopened mail. I didn't notice the details at first. The bills, the pale color in his face, the way his coffee sat untouched. Just that something felt wrong. I said his name. He didn't move. I remember thinking he was asleep. That was the first hope. Then the second thought came, and I wished the first one back. The hospital said it was a heart attack. Stress-induced cardiac arrest. The doctor explained while my mother cried beside me. But it wasn't just stress. It was what they did to him. My dad had worked for Sterling & Associates, consulting since before I was born. 15 years. That company was his second home. His clients trusted him. His peers respected him. His weekends were spent polishing presentations like they were works of art. He gave them everything. And in return, they merged with some bloated conglomerate called Bentley Corporation. And suddenly everything changed. The new face of the company was Victoria Cross. I never met her back then, only heard the stories. But in every version, she sounded the same, a woman who smiled while she twisted the knife. She didn't fire my father outright. That would have been too clean. Instead, she took him apart piece by piece, assigned his top clients to newer, flashier analysts, questioned his decisions in front of the board, started leaving him out of meetings, told him privately, of course, that his work felt emotionally dated. That phrase stuck with him. I remember the way he repeated it under his breath for days, like he was trying to decode it. When he finally quit, it wasn't out of pride. It was survival. My mother begged him to take a break, but he couldn't. He couldn't stop looking for a way back in. It wasn't until I found the pink slips that I understood how bad it had gotten. He hadn't told us he'd stopped getting paid. He didn't want us to worry. But he was drowning, slowly, and Victoria had tied the weights around his ankles herself. At his funeral, people told me how talented he was, how kind, how loyal. I didn't hear any of it. I was too busy watching the woman in the corner, who had once sat on Bentley Corp's board, a friend of Victoria's, drop flowers and walk away without a single glance at my mother. That was the moment. That was when I made the promise. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. I wanted Victoria Cross to feel what my father felt in that last year. The confusion, the slow unraveling of your worth. The way a person can be undone without being touched. So I waited. I kept my head down, graduated high school, studied international business at Northwestern, then earned my MBA in Boston. Every step of the way, I watched companies like Bentley Corp from the sidelines. I learned their tricks, studied their culture, figured out what made them tick and what made them fall apart. By the time I turned 30, I was working for a logistics firm in Denver. That's when I saw the post. Thompson Manufacturing was looking for a senior procurement associate, reporting directly to one Victoria Cross. I remember staring at the screen for a long time. I hadn't seen her name in years, but the moment I did, everything came flooding back. The funeral, the cold kitchen, the pile of unopened mail. I applied that night. She didn't recognize my last name. Of course. Why would she? People like Victoria don't remember the ones they stepped over. She just saw a well-qualified candidate with overseas experience and a specialty in international contracts. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the 24th floor office of Thompson Manufacturing, shaking her hand. She smiled, said she was excited to see what I could bring to the team. So was I. That was 17 months ago. I've spent every day since building something she thought belonged to her, something she didn't realize I was slowly rigging to collapse. And when it falls, she won't even know what hit her. But I will. Victoria Cross thought I was just another cog in her profit machine. She never realized I was building the whole thing to collapse. The first time I met her in person, she barely looked up from her monitor. Tyler, right? Procurement? She asked, fingers flying across her keyboard. Let's hope you're better than the last one. I smiled like an eager rookie. I'll do my best. She nodded. That's what they all say. That was our entire first meeting. No handshake, no welcome, just a passing glance from the woman I'd spent over a decade imagining in my mind. And none of it lived up to the real thing. Not because she wasn't sharp or powerful. She was, but because she didn't recognize the chessboard we were standing on. She didn't know I'd already made my first move. I kept it clean. My resume was impressive, but not flashy. Strong overseas work, tight references, plenty of humble language about learning from failure, and building trust with vendors. I'd spent years making sure the paper version of me looked exactly like the kind of loyal middle manager someone like Victoria would love to overwork. And it worked. She hired me in 4 days. My job? International procurement strategy. What that really meant. I was the guy who found the people who made the parts, stitched the fabrics, printed the labels. Thompson Manufacturing handled mid-range consumer equipment, but the components came from all over. Vietnam, Romania, northern Mexico. Sometimes even places Victoria couldn't find on a map if you gave her a flashlight and a week. That was fine. I didn't need her attention. In fact, I preferred not having it. For 17 months, I built Thompson's global supplier network from scratch. Textile mills in Bangkok, tooling shops near Guadalajara, a plastic molding facility in Czech Republic that still smelled like machine grease and lilacs from the old flour farm it replaced. Every supplier I brought in had one thing in common. They were survivors. Some had been chewed up by bigger companies and left for dead. Some had been burned by broken promises, lowball contracts, and efficiency initiatives that gutted their staff and forced them to automate. Victoria's kind of companies. So I made them a different offer, a new kind of partnership. I negotiated fair pricing. Not generous. I wasn't building charity, but respectful. And in every contract, I buried a clause, a small, elegant paragraph that sounded standard. In the event of a contract termination deemed unjustified or arbitrary, supplier reserves the right to initiate a coordinated exit as part of a joint supplier stability network. Legalese for, if you screw with one of us, we all walk. Nobody questioned it. Victoria certainly didn't. She had the attention span of a gnat when it came to contract language. As long as the costs were low and the onboarding fast, she didn't care if I built a thing out of toothpicks and hope. She figured she could muscle her way through anything later. She figured wrong. The beauty of it was in the layering. Each contract referenced another, not in a way that screamed collusion. No, that would have been sloppy, but just enough to create a chain that wrapped around every gear in Thompson's supply engine. I wasn't just connecting vendors. I was rigging the whole machine with explosives. Quiet ones, timed ones. And in the meantime, I played the part of the eager golden retriever, took notes in meetings, said yes to every unreasonable deadline, ate lunch at my desk, replied to emails at midnight like a good corporate soldier, let Victoria interrupt me, dismiss my ideas, call me the kid, even though I was 32. Every time she did, I added another knot to the fuse. At night, I collected stories, supplier feedback, data points, anything that showed how they'd been burned by people like her in the past, and how this time they were in control. I kept a folder, digital, encrypted, and backed up 3 ways. Not just for protection, for precision. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to pull one thread and let the whole thing unravel on its own. And the best part? They trusted me. Carlos down in Guadalajara. He used to work with a U.S. vendor who delayed payments for 7 months straight, then sued him for breach of contract. Lynn in Bangkok had a textile deal with a fashion giant who yanked production mid-season and left her with 18 unpaid workers and 4 containers of unsellable fabric. The Novaks in Czech Republic had been promised stability by a German firm that pulled out the moment tariffs changed. Every one of them had a scar. Victoria would have called it emotional baggage. I called it history. So when I offered them a clause that meant they'd never be left stranded again, they signed without hesitation. They remembered, and so did I. Tuesday morning started like any other. I was sipping the worst office coffee in Chicago, halfway through an email to a supplier in Ho Chi Minh City, when Victoria pinged me for a strategy alignment meeting. No warning, just a calendar invite with the subject line, urgent, procurement realignment. My stomach tightened. I should have seen it coming. I walked into her office at 9:02 a.m., wearing the same polite mask I'd worn since day one. She didn't look up, just pointed to the chair across from her and kept typing. "Let's make this quick," she said. Her screen reflected in her glasses. A spreadsheet, maybe two. Fast clicks. Highlight. Delete. Highlight. Delete. I sat. Realignment. I asked, already knowing. She didn't even blink. "We don't need your foreign connections anymore." That was how she said it, like she was talking about extra chargers in a junk drawer. My heart didn't pound. My hands didn't shake. I just watched the 17 months of quiet engineering. Every stitch I'd laced into the seams of this company started unraveled by her own hand. "Starting with the textile deal," she said. "Click. Bangkok's too slow. Too particular. We need agility." I leaned forward. "Lynn's team has a 10-week lead time with a zero-defect record. They're old-world thinkers," she cut in, her tone bored. "Too much emotional baggage." That phrase. God, that damn phrase. The same one she used about my dad. I blinked. For a second, it wasn't her office. It was my kitchen table again. And my father's knuckles were white around a mug. He wasn't drinking. The stack of pink slips. The words she'd said to him through her actions. Useless, outdated, dead weight. Victoria moved to the next tab. "I've terminated the Czech packaging contract and the Mexico tooling outfit. What's his name? Carlos Alvarez." She didn't even register the name. "Yeah, him too. We'll shift to domestic vendors. Faster. Cheaper." "They're not cheaper," I said quietly. "Then we'll find someone who is..." I kept my voice even. "You're canceling 3 Keystone suppliers. That'll ripple." Her eyes finally met mine, sharp and dismissive. "You don't need to explain supply chain to me, Tyler. I've been doing this longer than you've had a driver's license." No one was coming to save her. That was the irony. She thought she was cleaning house. Didn't realize she was pulling the pin on her own grenade. I stood, understood. "You're taking this personally," she said, already turning back to her screen. "This is business. I need vendors who play by the rules." I didn't answer. I just walked out. Not to my desk. Not to the team floor. Straight to the 3rd floor restroom. The one tucked behind the IT corridor where nobody ever goes. Locked the stall. Pulled out my phone. "First call, Lynn in Bangkok." "I see," she said after I told her what happened. Her voice was steady, but the hurt was in the silence that followed. "Then we are ready." Second, the Novaks in Czech Republic. "We knew this might come," Jan said. "It's a shame, though. We liked you, Tyler." Third, Carlos. He laughed. Just a low, bitter laugh. "She really called us emotional baggage?" he asked. "Tell her next time she needs precision die played in 24 hours. She can ask the Ohio boys charging triple." I hung up and took a deep breath. It was done. They weren't going to renegotiate. They weren't going to beg. Every one of them had signed that clause. The one buried deep in the contract Victoria never bothered to read. Coordinated exit triggers. If one of them got cut unfairly, the rest could walk. No penalties. No delay. The trap was triggered. Victoria had stepped right on it. 6 hours. That's how long it would take. By 3 p.m., Thompson's logistics dashboard would start showing flags. First, a delayed shipment from Bangkok, then a canceled pickup in Mexico. By dinner time, half our component flow would be gone. And by morning, she'd be standing in the middle of a factory floor wondering where the hell all the parts went. She thought she was doing damage control. She didn't realize she just pulled the whole damn foundation out from under herself. And me? I sat in that stall for a while longer, not smiling, not gloating, just breathing. Because this was a revenge. This wasn't payback. This was the moment Victoria Cross stopped being untouchable. She just didn't know it yet. By Thursday morning, the numbers couldn't lie anymore, even if Victoria tried to. 72%. That's how much of Thompson's global production had stalled by 9:15 a.m. Steel orders vanished. Printed labels never arrived. Machinery stood silent on factory floors while operators stared at empty pallets and blinking screens. At first, Victoria tried to blame logistics. Global shipping's been a mess all year, she said, pacing in front of the ops team like a storm in heels. We'll get on a call with freight partners. Rework timelines. Nothing we haven't handled before. But this wasn't backlogs or missed customs clearances. It was absence. Zero status updates. Zero tracking. Zero cooperation. It was like the entire overseas supply chain had vaporized overnight. What about Bangkok? Someone asked. Gone dark. Came the answer from a junior analyst. And Mexico? No shipment since Monday. Phone line says permanently disconnected. It was the same story everywhere. Vendors who once answered emails at midnight were suddenly ghosts. Contracts that had run smoothly for over a year were now under legal review. Emergency orders bounced. Freight carriers canceled pickups. Nothing moved. The ops director leaned over to me in the hallway that afternoon, sweat shining through his collar. Did you see this coming? Some of it, I said carefully. He nodded, like I confirmed a fear he hadn't wanted to say out loud. Inside Victoria's glass-walled office, the meltdown looked like a TED Talk gone wrong. She stood in front of her whiteboard, scrawling bullet points: domestic shift, North American realignment, agile pivot. Her voice cracked when she said strategic reset, but no one corrected her. Clients started calling, not just procurement heads, CEOs, furious ones. By lunchtime, 3 major contracts had been put on pause. One demanded a refund for last week's missing shipment. Another threatened litigation if they weren't fulfilled within 10 days. Victoria doubled down. This is temporary, she said in a department-wide video call. Her smile pulled too tight. We're transitioning our supplier base to more reliable partners. American partners. Long-term, this is good for everyone. Except it wasn't. Because the American vendors she was scrambling to replace us with, they quoted prices 4 times higher, lead time 7 months out. And they didn't trust Thompson. Not after word started spreading that half our supply chain had collapsed in a week. Meanwhile, I was quiet. But I wasn't idle. I had everything. Every email she'd sent terminating contracts. Every signed document where she'd overridden standard review processes. Every clause she'd skipped in those supplier agreements, including the ones that triggered automatic coordination, rights if one member of the supplier network was terminated without just cause. Buried deep, written in plain legal English. Clear as day, and airtight. It didn't just allow them to walk. It allowed them to walk together. No breach. No penalty. Just gone. The best part? Victoria had signed off on all of it. Not once. Not twice. Dozens of times. She never read them. Never asked. Never questioned why I fought to keep procurement contracts in-house rather than passing them to legal. She was too busy chasing her next quarterly margin win to see what was being built beneath her. By Wednesday night, I had printed out a full binder of her approvals, time-stamped, annotated, indexed. I didn't wave it around. Not yet. I let the panic rise first. I watched Victoria call in legal and demand a workaround. I watched her scream at the logistics manager like he'd personally driven every shipment off a cliff. I watched her snap at the finance lead when she asked why we hadn't diversified vendors earlier. And I watched her finally, quietly walk into Simon's office, the CEO, and close the door behind her. She was in there 43 minutes. When she came out, her face looked different. Flatter, tighter, like her skin didn't quite fit right. She didn't say anything, just walked past my desk like I wasn't there. 10 minutes later, I got a message from Simon. Subject, urgent executive emergency session. Body, join us in the boardroom at 8 a.m. sharp. Your presence has been requested. Victoria hadn't told him what I'd done. Not yet, but he was about to find out. And she was about to walk into a room full of people expecting answers. She wouldn't know I'd be sitting at the table until it was too late. Friday morning, 8:01 a.m. sharp. I walked into the executive boardroom and sat at the far end of the table. Quiet, unassuming, just another name on the invite. Victoria didn't notice me right away. She was standing near the monitor at the front, flanked by two VPs she'd probably threatened into showing up early. She wore a steel gray blazer, hair pulled tight, the kind of look meant to project confidence. But the minute Simon walked in, she faltered, just a hitch in her breath. Just enough. Simon, CEO of Thompson Manufacturing, didn't do small talk. He walked in, shut the door himself, and didn't bother sitting. He looked around the room. Then he looked directly at Victoria. How do we go from record profits to a complete shutdown in 4 days? No pleasantries. No buffering. Victoria jumped in fast. It's a supply-side dislocation issue, she said, tapping her laptop. We've initiated a shift toward domestic vendors to stabilize throughput. The overseas network wasn't scalable under current inflation and tariff pressures. Buzzwords, dots, slides, graphs. She clicked through a shiny PowerPoint like it was going to distract everyone from the fact that the production floor downstairs was practically a museum. Domestic realignment, she said. Supplier simplification. We're investing in leaner systems. Simon let her finish. Then he turned toward me. You built these relationships, he said, his voice calm but firm. What really happened? Every eye in the room shifted to me. And for the first time since I'd walked into Thompson 17 months ago, I didn't pretend to be small. I opened my laptop, clicked once. A large photo filled the screen. Lynn and her daughter standing in front of their Bangkok facility, holding a bolt of patterned fabric with 3 generations of their family stitched into the design. The room was silent. These weren't just suppliers, I said. They were our edge. Click. Carlos in Guadalajara, his son adjusting his safety goggles in the background as he trained him on a new lathe. Click. The Novak siblings outside their rebuilt warehouse in Czech Republic, loading pallets onto trucks bound for European retail stores. We didn't just have a vendor list, I continued. We had a partnership network. People who bent over backwards to keep Thompson running, even during the worst of the pandemic. Click. An alignment chart. Delivery efficiency. On-time percentages. Error rates. All higher than domestic vendors. These partners weren't just cost-effective, I said. They were better. Victoria crossed her arms, but didn't interrupt. I moved on, showed the contracts, showed the clause, Section 9.4.2a, showed Victoria's initials on every page. They didn't just walk, I said. They walked because we broke the rules we agreed to, because they were promised stability. And Victoria pulled the rug out. Click. I displayed an email Victoria had sent to me and 2 others. Timestamp Tuesday, 9:06 a.m. Let's drop the Bangkok textile team first. Too much emotional baggage. If they walk, they walk. There was a beat of silence. Then another click. A translated reply from Lynn, sent to my personal inbox after I made the call. We remember what it's like to be discarded. We don't forget. Neither do our peers. I looked up. They didn't coordinate their exit out of spite, I said. They did it because we gave them a clause and a reason. Victoria's jaw was tight now, still silent, still staring at the screen like she could will it into a different reality. But it wasn't over. Click. Side-by-side photos. Victoria's internal notes mocking supplier communication delays due to translation. With a comment, they need to learn English if they want to keep our business. Then Lynn's staff holding up Thompson label packaging with "Thank you," printed in 7 languages, something they'd done on their own during a record fulfillment year. Cultural differences aren't defects, I said, quoting Lynn's last message to me. They're strengths, until someone at the top decides they're inconvenient. No one was moving now, not a rustle of paper, not a sip of coffee, just quiet. And Victoria? She sat down slowly, her shoulders stiff, eyes blank, like it had just hit her, all of it, but she still couldn't say a word. Simon cleared his throat. Can we rebuild the partnerships? I paused, let the silence stretch just enough. Yes, I said, but not as long as things stay the way they are. Victoria looked at me, just barely, like she wanted to say something. argue, defend, deny, but she didn't. She didn't have a play left. And in that moment, she knew it. This wasn't about profit margins anymore. It was about trust. And she'd spent her entire career draining every drop of it. Now she was watching someone else fill the room with something she couldn't control. Truth, receipts, and the very people she thought were beneath her standing taller than she'd ever stood. Her collapse had already begun. All that was left was a condition. 3 weeks later, Victoria was reassigned to regional customer service operations. The official email called it a strategic refocus. No one believed it. Not after what happened. Her new office was in a distribution center outside Milwaukee, answering calls from clients asking where their shipments were. Her LinkedIn stopped updating. Her name disappeared from the leadership page. She still had a job, but not power, not access, not respect. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't throw a party. Because I didn't need to destroy her. I just let her destroy herself. I never told anyone why I did what I did. Not the board, not the suppliers, not even the team who watched it unfold day by day. I never said a word about my father, about the panic attacks in parking lots, the pink slips hidden under his bed, the man who'd once mentored half his firm but died thinking he'd lost his edge. Because it wasn't about vengeance. It was about balance. Consequences. Some people rise by stepping on others. Victoria did that her whole career. And in the end, she learned the truth. The people you dismiss on your way up are the same ones who pull the plug when your ladder cracks. She thought power was about control. She never understood it was about trust. And when she lost that, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. So she fell. And for once, I didn't need to catch her. Now I carry his photo in my desk drawer. Just a small one, him in his office. Sleeves rolled up, tie loose, flipping through a folder with a half smile that meant he just solved something nobody else could. I don't look at it every day. But when I do, I remember why I started. And I sleep easy now, not because I won, but because I kept my promise.